Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again. I'm going to play you a clip in a moment and see if you watched this over the weekend and what your own thoughts were about it. Please do hit that like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, but here's the clip.
Beautifully. Pardon me? Sorry, so much. Sorry, so sorry. Beautifully. Pardon me?
So what did you make of that? Salma Hayek's been getting some stick over the weekend and after people watched this, but I kind of watched this and I find it interesting from all kinds of perspectives. I'm no body language expert, but with NLP, which I've done some training in, you do kind of look at things like rapport and mimicking people's body language in order to build rapport and get on the same wavelength with them and such as that. And I look at this clip and, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, how much over the years have we actually seen Blake Lively with one of her sisters, not very much at all now, all of a sudden the sister's anywhere and everywhere with her. But I look at that clip and I see Salma kind of really hanging on to the sister, if you like. You've got Blake that keeps doing her touchy-feely thing. She's very much, she likes to touch people a lot, Blake, doesn't she? It's like I've said before, she kind of uses them as touchstones, but it's also like a controlling kind of thing. It's almost like if we were in private, I know it's not appropriate to do this to you, but in public, you can't stop me doing that. I sometimes feel it's a bit like that, and especially like with Cara on the premise, you often see she's like hand, and it kind of can get a bit much sometimes if somebody's like that with you, even if you are really close to them. When somebody's really handsy, it's very off-putting, or can be. And I imagine she was quite like that with Justin too. But yeah, people are kind of jumping on the Salma shouldn't be doing this bandwagon, but you've got to remember it's so complex behind the scenes, this kind of thing. There'll be industry connections. To me, it almost looked like she wasn't expecting all of that press and that. And we know this will have been a setup. Celebrities are quite capable of going out and not being photographed or filmed if they don't want to be. We know it's possible. They don't have to kind of walk slowly down the street like that with a barrage of photographers and videographers in front of them on the way to wherever they're going. So we know like that was staged, but to me, I feel like if you watch that clip, Salma looks a bit shocked, like she hadn't expected to be filmed, like she was just going for lunch or whatever it is they were doing. So to me, she's kind of hugging to Robin Lively as a bit of a comfort measure, because she's got Blake trying to pull her in to that side, but she's kind of edging that way. That's how I look at it, because I doubt she might support Blake. I mean, don't forget, there are a lot of kind people out there that no matter what somebody's behaviour is, they're kind people and they don't like to see anybody hurt. You know, even when it's self-inflicted actions that they're doing to themselves, they don't like to see people. You know, an empathetic person will put themselves in that in that person's shoes, won't they? So there could well be a little bit of an element of that, but it's a different thing again to want to be photographed or videoed being out in public with Blake Lively and being arm in arm with us. I think what you see there is kind of Selma just edging closer and closer to Robin Lively. I don't know how much she knows Robin. She might know her from social gatherings or things, but I think that's what you're seeing there. And I would just encourage people to, you know, not jump on the hate bandwagon. Just, if you're interested in this, what's going on here, just look at all the things that you can learn from it and what it tells you about your own sense of being judgmental or unforgiving and all of that. Just look at it with observational interest. That is what I would say. How fast, like a fascinating human drama that is playing out, that we can all potentially learn something from. But yeah, I think it smacks of desperation on Blake's part, because, you know, with Best Will in the World, Selma's kind of, you know, quite a bit older than Blake is. You know, they don't really have an awful lot in common other than being famous and celebrity and that, and probably an interest in fashion. But there's not really a lot there. And I think Blake looks quite uncomfortable. She doesn't look like, she looks anxious, I think. And I've had kind of people say in response to some of my videos that Blake doesn't have a low self-esteem issue. I still think she does. You can be a narcissist and have low self-esteem too. In fact, it's very, very common. So let's talk about some of the other things that were going on over the weekend too, because I saw from, I think it was Steph with the Deets, that she'd reposted, I think it was a story of Blake's where she was holding up for a 90s party that may or may not have existed. Maybe it was just a stunt. And she was showing this photo of a Spice Girls watch from the 90s and saying, oh, this, and like people are dissecting it. And the thing is, Ryan and Blake will actually love all of this rage baiting that they're continuing to do. That's why they're still doing it. They're still stirring the pot. I say love it. It's a bit more complex than this. It's like it floats their boat and they can't help doing it. While at the same time, I'm sure they realise that on some level it's quite damaging and that it is affecting public opinion, not necessarily in the way that they want it to, but they still can't stop themselves from doing it. That's the trap that they're in. So yeah, she posted this photo claiming to be on her way to a 90s party or something like that, and she flashes this photo of the Spice Girls watch and says, well, this is what you get for like 27 years of hoarding. You always have the right thing at the right time, basically. And everybody, of course, is jumping on and saying, is that a veiled threat? Maybe not just to Taylor, maybe to everybody in her orbit, that you better have a think about anything that you've said to me in the last, whole of my life that I may or may not have held on to and might use against you. This might not even just be about Taylor, it might be about a lot of different people. You imagine the things Blake Lively has got up to and what she's been party to. I'm sure she has plenty of ammunition for all kinds of people. And that's kind of why they're still not, kicked out of Hollywood or anything like that. They haven't really lost station in terms, like Justin has, in terms of his agent and his projects. They've not really hit that roadblock yet. So yeah, people are saying, is this like a veiled threat thing? This idea of, I can pull anything out of a hat because I don't let go of anything, especially if I think it's going to have value one day, if it's going to come, if that information is going to come back into style. So potentially that, but also it may well be this SEO thing that they play around with, whereby apparently Ice Spice has recently unfollowed Blake. So it's like, is her being photographed with the Spice Girls watch in the same space as her name? Is that like an SEO measure that if somebody Googles the terms Spice and Blake Lively, is it going to come up with that rather than the Ice Spice unfollowing her? Who knows? We don't know what's going on in these people's minds or what they're up to, but they do enjoy this gamesmanship. They do enjoy the intrigue. They're like the dark side of Taylor Swift, if you like, because Taylor likes to do all of that and have Easter eggs and have a bit of fun with her fans and lay positive trails for her fans. She likes to do things for her fans that cause intrigue, that are kind of like bonding things, because people can point it out and agree or disagree and all of that, and it's fun. Blake and Ryan do it in like a really negative kind of sleazy feeling way that makes you feel like you're being infected by something, because they're kind of laughing at you behind your back. It's more like that with them, I think, and that's why it's really, really distasteful. But yeah, it's actually interesting that she claims to be a hoarder as well, because hoarding tends to be when you don't feel good enough, or when you feel like you've got something to hide. You need a lot of stuff to hide behind. And we know, like I said before, when she goes out and she's covered head to toe in jewellery, there's like a ton of stuff hanging off her ears, hanging off her neck, hanging off her arms. Her outfits are heavily embellished. When you feel not good enough, or when you feel like you've got something to hide or to protect yourself from, you will always need more stuff. You'll never feel satisfied. You'll always need more. You'll always feel vulnerable. That's why I do keep bringing back to saying we can have some sympathy for Blake, because actually some of this does stem from having no personal security inside. She's not got a good grounding. There was I've just caught a clip just this morning of her saying, very recently, talking about being a child and a mother liking to play like old movies, like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and The Bad Seed, when she was a very little girl. Now, people kind of brush that kind of thing off or tell you to get over yourself, that, kids are going to see stuff and all of that. But kids really are like sponges at that kind of age, and they're very literal. So the things they see, they just accept as fact. So if they see people being treated a certain way, they think that's okay. Or that if people do cruel things, that's the way to go, especially if it's an adult that they see do certain things. I had a client recently who was only a little boy, 6 or 7, and with rapid transformational therapy, we take you back to scenes in the past that are the root cause of whatever your beliefs about yourself are. So this little boy, and it was a man struggling with aspects of anger, and some might say narcissistic traits, possibly. An ability to only see his own perspective, if you like, and that was damaging his relationships. But one of his scenes that we went back to was him in a shop with his dad and watching how his dad dealt with the shop staff. And his dad, he thought, was one way, certain level of calm and kind and this, that, and the other. And then in this shop, he sees his dad go into a full-on rage and meltdown and treat people really quite badly. But he also witnessed how powerful that was as a little boy, and that things moved when you treated people like this, that people fell into line, you started getting what you want. So as a little boy, 6, 7 years old, you start thinking, oh, that's how to be an adult, that's how you get your own way, that's power, that's what you need to do to people in order to get the outcome you need. And it's very confusing for a child, because on some level it doesn't feel right. I mean, he was very uncomfortable as a child witnessing his dad do this, because it kind of thought, oh, I thought my dad was this and now it looks like he's this. And it kind of confuses children. And I was saying to my client yesterday that, if a child sees an adult do something wrong, their parent, they don't question whether that's really right, or they don't kind of think, oh yeah, my dad shouldn't be doing that, my mum shouldn't be doing that. And they think if the adult isn't wrong, then they must be wrong, their thinking must be wrong, their understanding of it must be wrong. So it starts this thing of you starting to lose love for yourself and starting to lose trust in your own opinion too. So if Blake has been exposed to, maybe quite inappropriate things quite young, that have made us see like a level of cruelty and a certain way of having to be in order to get your own way, then that has become quite normalized to her. In her mind, that's just how it is. That is just how you treat people, that I have to get my own way and it doesn't matter who gets hurt. So there could be an element of that going on too. And we do know kind of at this point that she seems to be a habitual liar. And you'll never make sense of a habitual liar. It's no point, beating yourself up about it or trying to wish there could be another way, because they just don't get it. It's a certain level of psyche. I know myself, we had somebody within the family for a spell of time, and some of the things they lied about were just completely nonsensical, that were obvious things. It was like they had one hair colour one day and had gone blonde the next day. And of course, everybody that saw it in the family is going, oh, I like your hair so and so. Or, when did you get it done? Blah, blah, blah. And they turned around and just said, oh, that's just natural. It just goes like that in the sun. And it's like, what? Within 24 hours? I don't think so. And it's like, it's just a conversation stopper as well, because it's like, so this is kind of why, in some ways, I don't condone what Blake is doing at all. But in some ways I do, you can't help but feel sorry for her, because it's such a self-destructive way to live. You can never have real friendships, real relationships, not even with her husband or with her children, really, even. So that's kind of a really sad thing. I mean, I think we've heard before as well that they are repeating this pattern of behaviour as well, because I'm sure I've seen where Ryan said they've exposed the children to inappropriate films and things as well. I think some of the children have seen horror movies. I can't remember where I saw it, but I know full well he said, like, it's quite a funny thing, or blah blah blah, and this. But it's like I say, child, sponge, taking it all on board. They've not got the same logical, critical thinking. They're just going to accept what they are shown and what they are told as normal, and this is how you treat people. And we already know that Inez on the set of Deadpool and Wolverine was saying, if I want your opinion, I'll take Wolverine's appendage out of your mouth. And it's like, imagine that, a child saying that over and over and over again, as we know she was asked to do maybe other things that were equally vile. And we know she wasn't comfortable doing that as well. There's so many things, there's so many aspects to this, which I think is why it's fascinating us all, and it's fascinating us that they can't see it, and they probably never will see it, because there's just that level of disconnect, and they are still enjoying this idea of rage baiting us all by planting these anti Taylor Swift Easter eggs, if you like. It's like I say, Taylor is like a masterclass in how to make laying an Easter egg trail or a paper trail or a red herring trail. She's a masterclass in how to make it fun. Blake and Ryan seem to be a masterclass in how to make everybody furious and angry and boiled up about this thing as well. But yeah, just kind of have a think. Can you imagine having to live in that way, and the insecurity and all of that? Because I think we're seeing, I mean, Ryan hasn't, he's been a bit distant, hasn't he, for a few days again. I haven't seen him and Blake together or anything like that. But I think he's the one that's desperately trying to hang on to the career and the businesses and keep that steady. So he's trying to be very careful, but even when he tries to do that, things slip out. It's just impossible for them to live any kind of normal, rational, non-destructive life. So kind of I can manage to have a little bit of sympathy for them in that. But yeah, drop me a comment and let me know. I think that was all I was going to cover today. Yeah, I think that's it. It's this idea of, if we kind of fall into their way of thinking, and this, like, because like some people in the comments, and I value all of your comments, but for some of you, I feel the anger that you're getting about all of this and the injustice and things like that. And that's all I would encourage you, that if you are following this and things like the Diddy trial and all of that, try to keep that observational distance and try to learn from it, and try to see what's going on in your own lives too, both in what you're doing and what you're allowing people to do to you, and are people crossing your boundaries and all of that, because you can guarantee that behind the scenes Ryan and Blake have been manipulating people for quite some time. It's like other people have said, it would be interesting to know what they had on Hugh Jackman too. That more will come out about that. This isn't going away anytime soon. And people that are narcissists, that they will always reveal themselves. It's not a happy way to live, so they don't really need us to jump on and just be really hateful. They're there, people like this in your life are there to throw up a mirror and just show you, what may be going on in your own lives, if you like, or the kind of things you're allowing in your own life, or the kind of things you're succumbing to, like victimhood, like being highly judgmental and all the rest of it, like not caring about what happens to somebody else as long as you get your own way, or as long as things fall into place for you. These kind of people are in our lives for that, to kind of make us see what's going on in society, really. So in some very weird way, they're kind of serving some purpose in amongst all of the things that they're doing. But yeah, it is interesting to see that they are continuing to bait people in terms of their social media that they can't resist, and whether there is some scheme behind it or whether there isn't. They know that it's a talking. I think this is more coming from Blake's side of things at this point than it is Ryan, but he's certainly guilty of it in the past, and especially with Nice Pool and all of that. And then you've got Justin on the other side of things, that he's only popped up once recently when it was Mother's Day, when there was no real way he was not going to acknowledge the women in his life, because that's clearly who he is, that women are a big focal point in his life and are important to him, and that was a thing that was worth commenting on. He's not playing these games other than that. He's not interested in laying trails of poisonous Easter eggs or bad seeds or anything, you know. So it's just, you know, nobody's being fooled here, are they? But you drop me a comment and tell me what you think about what's been going on over the weekend and your own thoughts about this. But yeah, do bear in mind that if you're struggling with your own issues, a lot of this will stem back to your childhood and things that happened between 0 and 7, things that you witnessed, things that you were exposed to, decisions you made based on what adults' behaviour was. And things like that get stuck in your subconscious mind, and you just keep running that programming unless it's pointed out to you in hypnosis that may have worked at that time, that may have looked like the way to get things done at that time, but it no longer is. I mean, I'd love to do RTT on Blake more so than Ryan. I think they're both narcissists, but I think Ryan is a much smarter narcissist. I think part of Blake's problem is that she just doesn't have the intelligence for the level of Machiavellianism that's going on, and being a habitual liar, she can't keep track of a story. I mean, can you imagine waking up every day being that person where you can't keep track of your lies, and things come back to haunt you, and you can't even really remember that you said it. You've just blocked it out the minute you said it. That's kind of what she's living with. So people that say she's not insecure, you imagine living like that, you would be deeply insecure, because you've even forgotten the stories that you're telling. So how do you keep track of anything? How do you ever know what's coming at you? I mean, Marissa Peer, that created rapid transformation therapy, which is what I do. You know, if you're talking in terms of punishment and wanting fairness and all of the rest of it, what Marissa Peer would tell you is that the greatest punishment and also the greatest reward, depending on what kind of person you are, is that you go to bed and wake up as yourself. You know, and that is what Blake and Ryan are already doing. They're already living the biggest punishment possible, because they're waking up as themselves and they're going to bed as themselves, and right now they're living out all of the consequences of everything that's ever been going on, you know. So calm your jets, cool your jets. You don't have to worry about it. All right, please do like, subscribe, share. Hope you're enjoying this content, and I'm always happy to hear from you. See you later.